What? So you're calling her a dog, are you? As long as we're studying how Jesus spoke, this is Wretched Radio, a challenging section of Scripture for those of us in the 21st century who are not as aware of the culture, the context, the attitudes, the language of the first century. We can read a section like Matthew 15 and say, whoa, Jesus seems pretty mean there. In fact, there are even contemporary articles and authors who are saying Jesus was downright racist. He was a bigot, a misogynist. He called a Syrophoenician woman, which meant she was a Gentile, the B word. Is that what Jesus was doing in Matthew chapter 15? Jesus went out from there and departed for the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from the region and cried out to him, saying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed." All right. Got to remember, Jesus came as a Jew for the Jews because that was the promise. And that was going to be the order of things. And we, of course, know that God has always been about saving everyone, using the Jewish people as his evangelistic tool to bless them for obedience, to show the other nations, hey, something special is going on in Israel. Who's their God over there? And the mystery revealed has always been that Jews and Gentiles will be saved. Let's remember that context. Furthermore, let's remember the intensity of the hatred between Gentiles and Jews. Even those in Samaria who were half Jewish, or at least partially Jewish, Jews wouldn't even walk through Samaria. That's how much they despised them. That's our context. Let's see if we can make sense of what Jesus said. He answered not a word. And his disciples came and urged him, "Send her away. She cries out after us." But Jesus answered and said, all right, so stop right there. The disciples are the ones that are annoyed with the woman. And Jesus says, no, let her, I want to hear what she has to say. Let her come. Does that sound like a man who's going to be a misogynist? He shouldn't have, according to the current cultural context of the first century, he shouldn't even talk to the woman. But he does. He talks to the woman at Samaria, interestingly, two non-Jewish women. Why would he do such a thing? To be sexist? Hardly. He was playing counter to what the culture demanded in its day. His disciples said, "Send her away." Jesus said, "I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." And she came and worshiped him, saying, "Lord, help me." So he was sent for the house of Israel. So I hear you, but my mission is to be for the Jewish people. And she came and worshiped him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." What? So you're calling her a dog, are you? Let's keep going. And she said, "Yes, Lord. Yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table." The story continues. Verse 28, "Then Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire." And her daughter was healed from that very hour. Okay. If Jesus were a genuine sexist, racist, misogynistic man, he wouldn't have done that. Clearly, he was after something else. An article from Jerry Boyer in Christian Post dealing with the story to help us understand what's really going on. The woman asked Jesus to cast a demon out of the daughter. Jesus doesn't initially grant the request, sends her away. He explains his priority is to come to the flock of Israel. Instead of rejecting Jesus' metaphor, which was used in those days, the woman accepts it. And he responds, "Woman, great is your faith. Request honored." 1. Jesus does not use the standard New Testament Greek word for dog. He uses a diminutive small form of the word, which suggests a small household dog rather than wild street dogs. This event is the only time this Greek word is used in the New Testament to describe a dog, and it's not used in the Greek translations of the Old Testament. Back then, the word dog could be very pejorative. That was not the word that Jesus chose. Now, we still wrestle with that, so let's continue learning. Let's set aside the ridiculous idea that he is calling her a nasty name. First, it's grammatically impossible. He used the neuter case, not the feminine, and he used plural, not singular. He's not calling her anything. He's describing a class of people, probably Gentiles, and that is precisely what they were known as. So Jesus, in a sense, was you people, rumor is your dogs. I came just for the chosen people. How do you respond to that? He wasn't calling her a dog. He was, in a sense, representing the attitude of the day toward Gentiles. And it wasn't to endorse it. Third, let's get rid of the idea that he's dehumanizing her by using an animal analogy. The Bible is filled with metaphors comparing humans to various animals, many of them positive. Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. It's not negative. In fact, this very encounter with the Syrophoenician woman, he refers to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So he just called the Jewish people lost sheep. Was that intended to be mean? No, they're like sheep who have gone astray. It's language that was used to describe people. This is not Jews are humans, Gentiles are animals. Both are humans and both can be described with animal analogies. And please note, Jesus' reference to the house of Israel, which clearly fits with the theme that the household inclusion is a theme here. Jesus' objection is not that she's a dog who doesn't deserve help, but rather that his first obligation is to his own household. Otherwise, he'd be worse than an infidel who should not have bread taken from them. So he was just following the mission. He was staying on task. He wasn't being nasty. He wasn't being sexist. He wasn't calling her the B word. Fifth, the woman clearly sees Jesus' meaning. He mentions household dogs. She embraces and extends the metaphor using the same Greek word. Puppies do get the bread, but it is not taken away from the babies. It simply falls to the floor. Of course, that only happens in the household. The table is not out in the wilderness and wild dogs even in the street. It's in the house or the courtyard. Otherwise, the metaphor doesn't make any sense. When we read the words of Jesus, wow, do we ever have to know culture? Do we ever have to know context? Do we ever have to know the attitude of people toward one another? This is Hermeneutics 101. And you've got an increasing number of individuals inside of the church saying, well, Jesus was pretty bad form that day. No, he wasn't. He always spoke a fitting word. Always. Now, remember, there were people watching this too. Don't forget the context that Jesus is showing himself to be what? The king. And what are the attitudes of the people of the day? What are the attitudes of the disciples? The Gentiles are terrible and horrible. And Jesus on several, because it also with the captain of the guard, who was a proselyte, was a convert to Judaism. He healed. He was kind. He was good. He was just using the language of the day. How do I know this? Because Jesus would never speak a nasty word. He couldn't do it. He understood what Solomon said. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. And so he wouldn't besmirch somebody. He wouldn't tear somebody down. He wouldn't be reckless with others, what they should be counting precious, which is their own reputation, which, by the way, would be a word for us. Just a warning. Boy, do we see that a lot these days, don't we? How people talk about other believers, critical of other believers, how we excoriate one another when we disagree on some issues, or we hear a story or a rumor or an innuendo. Reputation is a precious thing, which means I don't want to be going after that unnecessarily. Now, Do we know from Jesus there are times when it is right to label it clearly? Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, I want to be making sure it's absolutely necessary. I don't want people to just suddenly think that the person is a leper because I disagree with them on a particular issue, especially a secondary or tertiary issue. Here's a test for you. You can see how you're doing in that regard when you leave church on Sunday. How do you talk about the folks that you encountered that day? How do you talk about the pastor? How do you talk about the worship? How do you talk about the elders? If it's a tearing down, and these are people who are striving to be godly, we probably want to take Solomon's warning. Don't be messing with people's reputation. We know that Jesus would never do that. Therefore, we know with the Syrophoenician woman, Jesus was not being a misogynistic racist. And until tomorrow, go serve your king. If you would like to see the entire episode of the snippet you're watching and perhaps check out my piano chops, simply visit wretched.org. Houston, I think we have a few problems here.
Go ahead, Wretched One.
Besides the fact I'm wearing a cardboard helmet, Houston, you have got one of the biggest false teachers in the universe. Are you kidding? He is so rich.
How rich is he, Wretched One?
I can see his house from here.